It was a time where you thought, of course, it was if you have an underlying condition, if you have chronic illness, you're at risk. And then people started dying, and then it seemed like it was all around us. And I felt at one point, I remember thinking, this is before we knew that, yay, HIV medications, but it was almost like, someone's dying here, someone's dying there, and it was a little bit of like, and I keep escaping it, and it started to become reminiscent of the days of HIV early on, and everyone was dying. Nobody knew who was going to be next.
I think my biggest concern might have been, at that time, was more so getting my medication and how that was going to work out. And I guess that's when the pharmacy that I get my medication from, they, had pretty much had it set about how to do that. So I was pretty calm with that part. It was the idea of waking up every day and not having somewhere to go, like I normally do, or the fact that I knew no matter what, I was going to be confined in the house like all day. So and not being around the people who I hang, when I go out to a bar or whatever, or all those kind of things, those that I'm not going to see those people, I'm not going to see my friends or anything. Yeah, that kind of got to me in that regard, but I think nothing too different from anybody else outside the medication issue. I think there's nothing too different from anybody else who was going through that whole lockdown.
When the pandemic hit, my job packed us all up, essentially made us remote workers. So I went from all day, 40 hours a week, if not more, of kind of socializing with my team. We were like a very tight-knit team where we all worked together on our different things, and so my socializing basically cut down to none once the pandemic hit, and that really caused me to go into a really deep depression. Within a year of the pandemic, I actually decided to go on mental health medication because I was sleeping all day and then I'd be awake all night, and it was truly hindering my work and jeopardizing my job. So I got on mental health medication, and since then it's helped. But when it came to my HIV status, or HIV and kind of still getting the medical care and things like that, thankfully, I go to Albany Med, and thankfully I got a call one day from a pharmacist, and they were able to set up mailbox. Basically they call me once a month, ask me exactly what scripts it is that I need, and they send them straight to my mailbox. So I never had to actually go to the pharmacy every month, and I could reserve going to the clinic for every 6 months. I did still go into the clinic because my doctor didn't really view me as someone who was super high risk. So 20 minutes in the clinic, in and out, and I was good to go. But for some people, the pandemic really messed with their routine and their regimen. You need to get your medicine every 30 days. If for some reason the clinic or the facility that you are getting your medication from isn't distributing them or anything, or you can't get out because you're quarantining with COVID, so you can't leave your house to go get the medications it is that you need. Technically, nobody should be coming over to give you the medications it is that you need. So a lot of people were falling out of treatment during COVID and missing doses and things like that, which led to a rise in detectable statuses once again. So I know a lot of my counterparts, especially in New York City, things shut down completely. They had no access to anything, and literally only emergency care in hospitals and things. So it became really, really difficult, and I know mental health basically skyrocketed pretty much for everyone, but especially something that people don't really realize is people living with AIDS and HIV, a lot of us, I can't speak from a medical perspective, but like a lot of us suffer from depression. A lot of us do, like the vast majority that I know. We all suffer from depression, and so the pandemic kind of exacerbated that, especially for those of us who had it under control. The pandemic and the isolation and things like that kind of really threw us all for a loop.
2020 for me was like, oh girl, what we gonna do now? But just like everything else in my life that I was faced with, I was like, okay, honey, you know, girl, strap up these boots, let's go, and pray for the best. And I had that mindset from the beginning. So my care wasn't, my health care was not altered by the pandemic. The way I accessed it kind of was, but it wasn't, the disruption wasn't detrimental. And I say that because for the first time I was able to do telehealth. So I had a doctor's appointment through the computer. and I came and did blood another day, but he did everything. He did my scripts, and for the, you know, because of who I am, and I like to just keep speaking I statements because this is not for everyone else, but my affairs are in order. So I was able to glide through the pandemic smooth sailing as it relates to my HIV. I started 2020 I started my new regimen, so I was like, okay, one pill a day. And even during the pandemic, I switched my medications from having me to go pick them up to being delivered, and I also got 3-month supplies. And so I feel that's very important when I talked about being your own advocate. Also thinking ahead. So me and a lot of other people, we thought ahead and was like, okay, what is it that we need to do to ensure that we're good? Being HIV positive, HIV was a pandemic, an epidemic. So it still is an epidemic today. It's not a pandemic anymore. So being a survivor of one epidemic, I feel like that gave me the tools that I needed to survive COVID. So wearing a mask was nothing for me. Going to get a vaccine was nothing for me, because I'm already used to following what the doctor says. If it's going to allow me to survive, or allow me to live another day to figure shit out in case shit hits the fan. Excuse my French, but so it was easy for me. It was not easy for a lot of my brothers and sisters. It was not easy for our senior population, our senior LGBT individuals. The mental devastation that it caused, not being able to go to your doctor every 3 months, or not being able to take your mother or your brother to the doctor with you because it's like, oh, only one person, and now you're going and you have to put yourself at risk of possibly running into someone with COVID, and having COVID and HIV. What is that going to do if you're in a place in your life that you're just beginning to manage your HIV? So my concern was always about, if I did have a concern, my concern was, is the rates of HIV new diagnosis going to increase so much during this pandemic, and the need to help those individuals be so great that people that have it under control is going to be pushed to the back burner. For instance, like I said, I happen to be going once a year. This is how the months kind of fell out. It was within a 12-month period, but a year cycle was like August, and I didn't go back until August 21 was my first appointment. I didn't go back until like April or May 2022. So what happens if, okay girl, you're good, you don't even gotta come to the doctor no more. But me going to the doctor is a part of my regimen. Just taking a pill, but no, me going to my doctor, I have questions. I had questions during the pandemic. Should I get the vaccine? If I get the vaccine because I was mandated because of my job, which vaccine should I get? Should I get 1 or 2? Should I pay it all to the other child and just be on services? Are services going to be available to people with HIV? Because I had mentioned that being HIV positive in New York and other states. The other state I know is California, but we have services that if you're HIV positive, you can get housing, get you some food stamps, get your little benefits. If you live in a city, benefits, all that stuff. So I felt like, you know, you could be okay. But those resources dried up a long time ago. And once you lose those resources, such as I gave my resources up to be a productive citizen for myself and work back in 2015, and so having to navigate during a pandemic and not having anything to fall back on, having to work, it was really heavy for me, but it was also liberating. And I felt proud to be able to do that, because having HIV is not a death sentence. Having HIV is not something that necessarily can hinder you from doing everything in life that you want to do, even during a pandemic, when you gotta cross every T and dot every I. You know, having HIV actually made me stronger, made me more aware, made me more vigilant during the pandemic. It made me want to help others. I'm like, okay, girl, you got COVID. I don't got COVID. I have HIV. You don't have HIV. But let me tell you how to get through something that can take your life out like that. You know what I mean? And so being able to provide that emotional support, being able to show people how to handle something so negative and can affect your mental wellness. For me during the pandemic, that's what got to get me through and help my mental health as well. Because at one point, you know, once the different variations started coming out and we started seeing more and more people die, and started hitting Albany. When you turned to the news, it was like, oh, 15 people. It was like, oh, girl. Well, I go to Albany. Man, how come they in my hospital, girl? And one time, my husband he's a diabetic, and 2021, he went into DKA, and he had to go to the hospital. And the ambulance had to come get him, and I couldn't go with him. I couldn't get in the ambulance. I couldn't go. And I was like, well, I need to go to the hospital to see my husband. But I'm not fit to go there, and so it changed. It brought me back to being scared. Like, okay, I'm doing everything I need to do, but what if I get sick during this pandemic with COVID? What is that going to do to a person that has HIV?
Also, for the first couple months, I quarantined with somebody. Actually, for like 3 or 4 months, I was quarantining with somebody, and they were a little further off. So there was a time that I went to the pharmacy in an Uber to buy masks and gloves and like all that stuff that I needed and get my medications. And then there were other times when it was delivered to me. So I'm grateful to say that for me there was no interruption in receiving my treatment. Going to see the doctor and having labs done was a whole nother story though. I don't really recall. I'm sure I must have seen my doctor. I'm sure I must have seen my doctor at some point in that year, at least twice. You know, it's recommended that you do it every 3 to 6 months. I try to do it every 3 months, but you know, sometimes life gets in the way, and sometimes it's more like 4 or 5 or 6 months. But I never let it pass the 6-month part. Like, and that's rare when that happens. I'm usually pretty good about being there every 3 months. I don't really recall the specifics of my doctor's visits during the pandemic. So I'm 50 now, right? So in the height of the pandemic, I was what, 48, 49? It's been 2 years now, right? Mm-hmm. It was 2020. So yeah, there's something about the program that I'm working now, and like this faith and leaning into higher power that I have, that like really it's really just letting go and letting God. And so yes, was I vigilant? Absolutely. There was a time, I don't do it so much now, I've gotten really lax compared to, you know, how it was during the height of the pandemic. But you know, I only left the house when I absolutely had to. If I needed to travel somewhere, I would get in an Uber, because at least I knew that all the Ubers had that divide, and I was wearing a mask, the Uber driver was wearing a mask, the windows were open, you know, everybody was spraying stuff, and you know, if I walked in the house, like I was taking my stuff off right at the door, and I wasn't trying to track anything in the house, and I was wearing rubber gloves, latex gloves, and masks, and like we were all doing. That's how we were all moving, right? And so that, yes, there was fear and being like overly cautious. That's what we needed to do at the time. We're not in that space anymore, right? Thank God. I mean, I think isolation, I haven't thought about being booed up for a minute. And like the fact that God put somebody, God's always looking out. Like, you know, when people say that they're blessed and highly favored, I am blessed and highly favored. Because I would have probably been climbing the walls by myself. And so God gave me companionship, you know? And so it made it a little more tolerable. You know, I know a lot of people were relapsing and that got sick and that died. I am not a COVID denier. I know that shit was real, you know? But it didn't touch me. It hasn't, to this day, I keep testing negative. You know, and I test regularly. My mom is in the nursing home. My mom got it. My mom got it in the nursing home. But I have not tested positive. She's good. She's fine. Thank God. But, you know, she was really lethargic. She lost her appetite, but she's good. She made it through.
Hello, my name is Leandra and I've been living with HIV since 2018. Medication keeps my HIV under control.
My name is Brandon.
I am Jeffrey.
I'm Michelle.
My name is Kareem.
My name is Dawn. My name is Nico.
I'm Leilani, and I've been HIV positive since 2006. I'm undetectable and untransmittable.
Hey, I'm Mars.
My name is Victorine.
My name is Titus LaRue.
I'm Brandon.
My name is Eileen.
My name is Tyrone.
I'm Rick, and I've been living with HIV since 2003. I'm managing my physical, mental, and sexual health.
My name is Lamia.
My name is Liza.
Hi, I'm Dana.
My name is John Love.
Hi, my name is Dawn.
Hi, my name is Kim.
My name is Rob.
My name is Sel.
Hi, my name is Pam.
Hi, my name is Jackie.
I am slaying HIV.
HIV Stops With Me is a New York statewide campaign run by the Department of Health. And essentially what our purpose is to, you know, kind of, we are a resource. We are about 30 different spokesmodels from all over New York State. And essentially we were brought onto this campaign to tell our stories and to share our lived experience as a way to help, you know, educate, and as a gateway to educating. So as a campaign, we're really dedicated to kind of building community. There's a resource page on there, so like we can help get you linked into care no matter where you are in New York. And you know, we really want to kind of help people build self-esteem around their status and kind of show that there's nothing to be ashamed about. And you know, at the heart of everything, we're always trying to, you know, end stigma, prevent it, end it, especially relating to people living with HIV. And that is really the mission of the campaign, is to end stigma with people living with HIV and, you know, kind of build all that community to where people who are living with HIV don't feel alone. And then the hopes are that for people who have just been diagnosed with HIV, we want them to feel like they have a resource and have people that they can kind of come to and relate to and talk to. You know, that's really the campaign. So it's HIVstopswithme.org. And we're actually launching a new campaign this year. So it stays HIVstopswithme.org, but every year we have a new motto. So this year our motto is Slay. And we're kind of really talking and sharing our experiences about how we are slaying HIV. A lot of us have an undetectable status. Honestly, majority of us do. We're not. So, you know, we're kind of just talking about what it is that we do with a focus of what it is that we're doing to stay healthy and continue to slay that HIV status. So that is the campaign. I've been on the campaign now for, this is my 3rd year. And the campaign itself has been going for about 12 years now within New York State. So.
Remember I told you the story, I was like being bullied, and I was working with at a particular agency, and because of the work that I have done as an advocate and my being vocal about gender identity and making sure that our rights are protected, our rights are given to us, and policy changes, and we have access to care, they challenged me, and I started telling my story through trainings. And one day, this was in 2017, the campaign were looking for people, and they reached out to so-and-so, so one person reached out to another, and people started speaking about my name, about the work that I was doing, and me being brave about sharing my stories in these trainings. And I got the call, and they was like, would you like to be a spokesmodel? And up until this point, I was like, I was apprehensive because, like I said, I was, having little days when I was partying and, out there swinging and dinging, baby. And I didn't want the trade to know, girl. That was positive. And I say this because they put your advertisement in Black and brown communities in your area. So, child, I'm going to the little weed spot, child, and my post is right there. I'm like, girl. They're like, oh, that's you. So you get the accolades and praise, but then the back end is, some people is ignorant. Now, of course, intimacy was consensual with everyone I've been with. Like, I wasn't out here raping nobody. But still, the fact is, I didn't ask them, were they positive? Did they have chlamydia? They didn't ask me, was I positive? I have chlamydia. And at the time, back in the day, I wasn't no advocate. I wasn't then who I am today. And so it was scary at first. So that was why I was a little bit apprehensive. But once the person said, this can be your opportunity to take back your narrative and release yourself from that stress and that being traumatized from being bullied, girl, tell your story. Now you get to tell it your way. Tell it on your own. And I took the opportunity to do it. And now, this is my 4th year in the campaign. We're getting ready to release our launch for this new year at the end of this month. And so I'm excited. And so I wouldn't want to do anything else. And me sharing my status, it's not me sharing my status, it's me sharing my story. And that's what sold me. Because I'm HIV positive, that's nothing to glow about, but what about the story, how I made it over, what am I doing to remain negative, and how can I end stigma, link people to care, and build self-esteem among other people that are positive.
So I knew about it for a few years because I was involved in the HIV community, I've worked in the field, so I've seen the campaign, but it wasn't until a friend of mine, one of the spokesmodels, messaged me and said, I want to refer you to the HIV Stops With Me campaign as a spokesmodel. I think you'd be really good. And I was just like, okay. Remember, my thinking was, I'm here still for a reason. I didn't die. I need to take the opportunities that come my way so I can break this stigma. I could break that barrier. I could break down this is the face of HIV, because there isn't a face. It's my face. It's my friend's face. It's somebody I don't know's face. So I said yes, and I had a phone interview, and next thing you know, I was asked to be a part of the campaign formally, and I went on that journey, and that was this year's campaign is campaign number 5 for me. And it has been such an awesome experience. And while I've been used to support networks through my experience with my addiction and HIV, this is something that's very different. I feel so connected to my fellow spokesmodels. I feel like when we get together, there's just this energy and this connection, and I feel closer to them than anyone in my network. Of course, except my children, my family, and close friends, but this is a different connection. All right, so anyone in that, any kind of self-help or support group environment, these people are down. They're no joke. And Nothing is going to stop any of us.
So the first time, I always have to give props to Luna, because the first time I was aware of the campaign, I saw Luna's face on the subway.
And for those who may not know who Luna is.
So Luna Lewis Ortiz, also known as Luna Khan, also known as Icon in the ballroom scene. To me, Luna is a brother who's also a sister that I know for many years. Actually, I first met Luna in 1988. I was 16, 17. So, boom, fast forward, mid-90s, I'm on the subway, I look up and I see Luna's face, and I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, ooh, that queen is fierce. In the good way, not the bad way, old school way, right? Like, fierce, like, wow, like Luna is like, and I remember thinking, and I was already positive. And I remember shrinking in the subway and thinking to myself, that could never be me. That could never be me. I'm like, that queen has nerve. That's what I said to myself. Fast forward again, I was very much in the closet about my status. And I was already doing some public speaking, I was already doing some writing and performing. But I would share and disclose my status in very safe and confined circles. So usually in like youth related stuff, and usually with youth, like in like classrooms, you know, in safe, but what I mean by safe was like people that I knew or suspected didn't know anyone in my real life. And so it's like I would go, I would drop this bomb, and then I would leave it there. But I started writing more and more about my status, and then eventually I got to a place where I could perform it in safe spaces, and then those spaces started to expand. And then it was in one of those spaces more recently, like within the last 4 years, where I was performing. I was asked to speak up in Yonkers, and and to speak on a panel, and I was one of 4 or 5 people on that panel, and I was the only one on that panel that wasn't in the campaign. So I believe it was Leilani, who's in the campaign, has been in the campaign for a really long time, and is like a leader within our community of spokesmodels, who asked me if I would be interested in being in the campaign. And I reluctantly said yes, and but I said yes, and then I was interviewed, and I was offered the opportunity. So, you know, there was the shoot, and there was a weekend where all the models got to bond, and eventually, when the campaign was about to drop, I was still living in the Bronx, and the box with the posters and the palm cards showed up to my house. I wasn't home, I was working. Somehow my phone number was on that box. And so I was at work and I get a call from a number that is not saved on my phone. And it was my next door neighbor. I lived in a building in the Bronx that was primarily Dominican. Everybody knew everybody. And she was like, "Vecino!" Meaning neighbor. And I'm like, "Hola, vecina, what's going on? What's?" And she's like, "Oh, I got this box for you." You know, I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I get out of work. I probably won't be home until like 8 or 9, but, you know," she's like, "Yeah, just knock on the door. If I'm not here, my daughter will be here." So I knock on the door, and the daughter hands me this box, and it's a cardboard box with one of the palm cards in the front, with my face and my HIV status. I am you, you know, HIV stops with me, and I freaked the fuck out. And I picked up the phone and I called Sheldon, who's, you know, our contact, our point person, you know, at the campaign. And I'm like, oh my God, my fucking neighbors know, my building, everybody's gonna know, ah! Freaking out, right? And he was like, Bob, are you kidding me with this? Like, you know you're about to be on like billboards and subway trains, right? And I was like, well, yeah, I know, but that's out there. I was like, that's on the subways. It's not in my building. My neighbors are gonna know. Sheldon was like, you know what, Rob? So, I don't know if it was like just divine intervention or if it was that conversation with Sheldon or what happened, but my ad that year was not very prominent in any of the advertising spaces. Like, I was not on the subway, I wasn't on a billboard, and I was actually kind of grateful for it. The following year, I was in a very different space. I think like I had, you know, it was no big deal in my building if anybody knew, if they talked. And so the next year, when I was afforded the opportunity to come back again, and I actually, I actually petitioned for another year to come back. And you know, I addressed that conversation with Sheldon, and I said to him, you know, if I were in your place, I don't know that I would ask me to come back. I said, but you know, I've had some time to sort of digest and sit with this, and you know, realize that I did not represent the campaign to my full potential. So I asked for another opportunity to come back, and I did. And I feel that I was more present in the campaign, and my energy was brighter and more open. My pictures, even to me, I felt looked better. And even the design of the ads that year, they were brighter, they were lighter. It was a white background versus that dark background, you know. And there was just there was something very joyous about the campaign that year. There was a lot of joy reflected in all the pictures, and mine included. There was that particular picture, I was looking off to the side a little bit, and there was sort of this mischievous, flirtatious sort of something in my eyes. And I really, really liked the picture, and it actually ended up on the subways that year. And it was the year that same month, the shutdown happened. So, which was a double-edged sword, because that nobody really saw the ad at first because the shutdown happened, so nobody was riding the trains. However, on the flip side of it, the ad was only supposed to be up for a month, but it stayed up for over a year. So a lot of people saw that ad on the end, at the tail end of the pandemic, when like the world started to come back. And I got so much love. The people that were seeing it were, what was the term for people that had to be out there?
Essential workers.
Essential workers. It was primarily essential workers. And the feedback that I got from people, both positive and negative, really allowed me to crack open the healing process in a whole nother way. Especially some of the things that people would say who were in a place that I was in when I was still bound by internalized stigma and shame. So it was really powerful. It was really powerful to be Luna to someone who was me. Now, it was me that was, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That there were people that were looking at my picture and saying, "Ooh, that queen is fierce. That queen's got nerve." You know? And it was really just the healing and the acceptance.
We're going to say this is March as we're filming this.
Yes.
To your knowledge, is there a cure for HIV, or are they close to a cure for HIV?
To my knowledge, is there a cure for HIV? My faith tells me yes, there's a cure. I think that we are being made to suffer on purpose for gain, for self-gain of, people in higher places with higher authority or higher powers, different motives and alternatives for different motives and objectives on why people are suffering. Will a cure ever hit the masses in my lifetime? I'm hopeful and optimistic that it does. I don't see anything wrong with a cure, a functional cure. We do have on record within recent history of 2 people being cured of HIV due to procedures they had done, which are related to bone marrow. And those people, one recently in New York, actually, I believe we're in March, I think this is like late January, February, that breaking news came out I'm not sure if it's a female or a male. I know the first one was a male. I think the second one's a female, that she's now cured of HIV. But these are treatments and experiments that are taking place. I do know that the dollars for research around HIV has been significantly cut. It's not there anymore. And so I believe we put just as much effort as we put into finding cures for everything else or finding better ways to manage other chronic illnesses. I do think that we can, that we will have a cure within the near future. When I say near, I'm speaking in 10-year intervals. So 10, 20 years from now, we can possibly see something that will be available to the masses. Do I think that would be a great thing? That will be on an individual basis. And I know that a lot of people, because this has been a conversation that we have been forced to have as advocates. What happens if a cure does come? Hell, I'm out of a job as far as being a spokesmodel for, because I'm a spokesmodel, we part of an advertisement, a part of that, advocacy level advertising. So if there's a cure, there'd be nothing less to advertise because HIV would no longer be here. So what will we do then? What would be the messaging? Where will we go? If there's a cure, what will life look like? HIV has been so devastating and catastrophic to not only Black and brown communities, but to humanity as a whole, that for it to just disappear like that, it would take a long time for people to be able to live in that new normal. And what is that new normal going to look like? And just because we have a cure, once again, as I always said, is the cure going to rise up to the level of equality and equity? Am I going to be cured of HIV? Now I lose. Remember I said New York provides service to people that are HIV positive. So if it's a cure, that means my housing voucher's gone, food stamps gone, insurance is gone. So now I'm curable. Hey! But now I'm on the streets homeless. And now I'm a part of another population that's underserved, undervalued, that's gagging fiercely. A homeless population, a homeless society, or unhoused population is so disproportionately, outrageously in numbers in these days and times. So now you have all these people that, you know what I mean? And so I don't think there's going to be any work and anyone's going to care about where people go now. You have your cure. So that can be life-changing. A cure will be a life-changing experience. And hopefully our communities, our institutions, ourselves, we will be able to love ourselves and move on and have optimal life experiences thereafter.
That's funny. You mentioned that because I'm going back to the conversations that I had when I had that online about somebody talking about that, and someone who was actually HIV positive jumped on and defended what I was saying. He was saying to what you said, if there was a cure, first of all, the government, they gonna want that shit that they was providing, that housing, them vouchers and all stuff, they gonna want that back. So they're gonna give you that, because they want their money back.
It's gonna happen immediately, honey. Trust me. Just like you see how they giving out these COVID shots, it's not gonna take them the whole year, honey. Oh, they're gonna be setting the girls up, baby. They're gonna run your test on that last Medicaid. It's gonna be your last Medicaid appointment, baby. You know, I'm telling you. And we live in a world, and I know it sounds, I just laughed about it. It sounds so cynical and it sounds so far-fetched, but boo, it's not. We live in a capitalist society. And now global capitalism is something that's more and more, they're not thinking about your health outcome. Where you're gonna live, what life's gonna be like, and also with HIV, something else that they do while numbers are so high, they clump us all together. Okay, you got your voucher, so people with vouchers are gonna live on the east side. You see what I'm saying? So everyone over there got HIV. That's why the numbers are so high, because they having sex with one another. They're having sex with that community. So now you remove HIV, but now you have people that have been displaced, because you don't get to choose in some areas. No, if you HIV positive on a voucher, you live in downtown, or you live in Far Rockaway, you live in here. So there's no choice. So you're displaced. Once again, you're being placed at risk. You're being placed somewhere. So now you're HIV negative. You're cured of HIV, and you've been displaced. You moved away from family. It's so many components that now it's going to be moving. That's going to have a whole population of people, individuals, and then we're not talking about the older girls. The older, mature people might be able to bounce back or move on. But what about the young people that move from state to state? That just because of the cure, that's not going to change people's minds. Because they say, well, prove it. You know what I mean? It's like with COVID. What you mean you got the vaccine, but you still can catch COVID? It's always going to be that what if. You know what I mean? So we are so far away from even being able to celebrate talking about a vaccine, because as a community, our government has not prepared us on what's that going to look like. What is that going to look like for us? And now there's a cure, but HIV also causes the older you get, because now we're an aging population. People not dying, catching HIV at 20 and dying at 22. No, people are being diagnosed at 18 and living to be 80, child, and that's fact. Okay? And now the problem is we have a whole population of people that was from the 80s, the older senior citizens now, people that in the nursing home with HIV, and your body with age gets different ailments and stuff. So what's that gonna look like? It's good conversation though, that needs to be had, but not only amongst ourselves, but these are conversations we need to be having with our medical providers and with our politicians about how they reallocate these dollars. When you talk about HIV funding, everything goes to prevention. I'm talking, we get billions of dollars from the government, from the federal government, millions from the state. Most of that goes into salaries and prevention. What about life after? That's the question that we need to be asking if we talk about a vaccine. But hopefully one comes. If it don't, we still can continue to do what we gotta do, and we still can continue to live each day like it's our last, and continue to educate, provide love and stigma, and build community.
If you haven't done your research on HIV or AIDS in the last 5 years, and you're running off of kind of like old knowledge and old things that you learned back in the 80s and 90s, I would really encourage you to, pull up your phone and Google it and really go, as I would say, kind of go down a rabbit hole of information and research to kind of understand where we are with our research, because we've advanced a lot. HIV isn't a death sentence anymore, whereas back in the 80s and 90s, that's exactly how those diagnoses were presented to us, was that it was a death sentence. From, an advocate standpoint, I would encourage people to continue to, find your local clinic, get tested. If you are someone who goes to your annual visits, go ahead and ask for that, STI screening, just to be sure that you know what your status is. Because if you don't know what your status is and you've been, sexually active or anything like that, there's a chance that you could be HIV positive and just not know. And the sooner that you find out that you're positive and get on treatment, the sooner that you can basically become undetectable and virally suppressed.
Well, what I've always said, and I know I've gotten some backlash for saying this, but I've always said that yes, it is understandable when people want to have unprotected sex, I've always said it is unnatural to have a barrier between you and your sex partner. However, this is the part that people want to ignore that I'm saying. However, because of the fact that we do have HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and all these things out here, using a condom is still, something you definitely need to consider. And if something happens, because you chose not to, you need to take responsibility for it. Because I myself, when I became HIV positive, I was a constant, user of condoms. Between the 3 to 6 months that I got a test, I only had the number of times I did not use a condom that wound up giving me HIV positive was 2. So it like the old saying, it just takes one time. And I didn't get mad at whoever the person who might have gave it to me. I just took that on and just had to own it. So if you want to play without a condom, whatever happens, that's on you. You have to own that.
Know that you're not alone, whether you're HIV positive or negative. But if you're HIV positive, you're definitely not alone too, because you've got all of us, and we're here.
Perfection is not possible. Strive for perfection, but enjoy the journey. For me, it's about spiritual progress versus perfection, because I know I'll never attain it. Love has to start from within, right? And so it doesn't matter who loves you and who doesn't. If you don't have it for self, then I don't know. If nobody told you yet today, let me be the first to say that I love you.